Hello there.
General Kenobi.
Terribly sorry to just drop in like this, but it's time to talk books.
And with that, let's roll right into our special May of the 4th Be With You edition of the 800s. I am your co-host, Alex, and you just heard from my fellow co-host, Obi-Wan Canadam.
Good enough.
And behind the scenes, as always, making it happen is Emperor Allen.
Emperor, wow.
Supreme Chancellor Allen, and before I don't know.
I like that. I like that. Supreme Chancellor Allen.
All right.
If you joined us for our pre-show, you heard some music that was Fearless First by Incompetech. You should check out all they have to offer at incompetech.filmmusic.io. Also, if you'd like to know more about us and what we do, head over to dmstable.com. Otherwise, let's get the show on the road. What book are we reviewing today, Alex?
So this month on the 800s, we will be discussing, in honor of May the 4th, the Star Wars Legends novel Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. The desert planet of Tatooine is home to more than just the wretched hives of scum and villainy of Mos Eisley. Moisture farmers, sand people, and even the Bantha are just trying to survive each other in harsh conditions under the three suns. A newcomer has arrived, though, and it's time for us to see what Tatooine has in store for Kenobi.
All right, if this is your first time joining us for this show, I'll give you a quick rundown. First off, welcome. Second off, we are a discussion show. What that means is Alex and myself will pose a question or topic to discuss, while Alex and myself share our own opinions on that topic. That will give you guys in chat an opportunity to type up what you think about the topic, and we'll take a look at chat and see who's got what to say. So if you have anything you'd like to talk about this book, feel free to throw it in the chat at any time. We're always on the lookout for a topic or question to discuss for this book. But that's pretty much it. We'll just chit chat for about an hour and see where the convo flows.
And also, just a quick disclaimer, we do cover adult topics and themes, and while we try not to swear too much, we do sometimes, so bring kids around at your own discretion. Also, trying to create a fun and supportive environment over here at DM's Table where people can feel free to nerd out, geek out, ball out with whatever they love without any fear of any sort of judgment. So in some, be kind, or may the Force not be with you. Fuck off.
Nice Force entry in there. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the conversation. Alex and chat, what were your first impressions of Kenobi?
The first impressions were we've had a lot of books that have been pretty heavy on world building recently, and this one, and we'll talk more about this, but like my first impression was this book definitely assumed from the get-go that you were a Star Wars nerd reading it. There's not a whole ton of description of stuff up front. I mean, you get the most basic things, but it assumes that you're going to fill in the world, and what that allowed them to do was focus more on like relational dynamics. And so I was caught pretty abruptly with like, oh, like I'm glad I'm not lost, but you know, but you know, like I knew exactly what was going on, but I was like, man, thank God for this. Thank God I know what I'm reading, and for Wikipedia. But yeah, it was a bit slow-ish to start, but you know, I think it was because, like I said, I'm used to those first pages being a lot of world building that just wasn't there in the beginning.
Yeah, I definitely think this played off as more of a sequel book. Elpac Phantom says, as a Star Wars nerd, I didn't even notice the lack of world building. it is something where Star Wars is ingrained enough in modern culture that it's kind of hard to notice the lack of world building, and you just kind of assume that the reader is going to know all about Tatooine and how Kenobi got there and all that.
Hmm.
But for me, what really stood out about the beginning of this book is the cut away from Kenobi, where they fleshed out the oasis and the surrounding farmers and the community that is a part of the setting here. And I thought that deserves a noted shout out that they did an exceptional job of showing and not telling the world around. And, you know, it could have been very simply done where um, Annie just narrated the surroundings to Kenobi, but that didn't
Hmm.
happen. And I loved the take that the author decided to do with that beginning section there.
Excellent point, and 100% agree. Also, VS Drake mentioned that there's a ton of implied information for sure, but all you need to watch is episodes 1 through 3. Uh, Honestly, I don't even think you necessarily need to watch episodes 1 through 3. You could probably get away with watching episode 4, and as long as you vaguely, the original trilogy, great, 4 and 6, as long as you've seen Tatooine, like that's one of the glories of the universe of Star Wars is every planet is just like one thing. So, or at least one environment. So, but I do 100% agree with Drake that there's just, it's not that there isn't world building, it's just there's a lot of implied information, and it could have been lazy, but to your point, Adam, it wasn't, because of what he focused on in in showing, not telling.
Yeah. Um, VS Drake says, I loved getting info on the Tusken Raiders. What was your favorite world building thing that was in here?
I guess like in my mind, it does. There's overlap. Like there's a Venn diagram that is pretty heavily overlap between lore and world building. So I'm gonna answer this more as the Tusken Raiders bit, and less as like a world building specific thing. Um, I liked learning about the reason why they dress the way they do. That has always been a question for me for the Tusken Raiders, because like I know that when you're in like a desert environment, covering up does not necessarily mean making yourself hotter. It's sun protection and things like that. But the fact that it is culturally, you get more wraps, the more uh, self-sufficient and the more deadly and dangerous you get. The fact that their raids are 100% a part of their lifestyle. This wasn't anything they were forced into. This is the way they've always been. Uh, and that comes in their clothing. And it was kind of cool to get some differentiation, especially, with our red-eyed friend, uh, as to like how this can be a little bit different. What was your favorite bit?
Yeah, you know, the big question in a universe like Star Wars is what does a race have to do in order to be hated by everyone, you know? And the
Mm-hmm.
Tusken Raiders are certainly hated by everyone. And even on a planet like Tatooine that doesn't see a ton of interstellar travel, there's definitely multiple races of aliens there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's several mentioned just in this story alone. So like what did the Tusken Raiders do to become so hated? And I loved the colorful narration about, you know, their culture and how like they don't change their wrappings so they end up stinking really bad. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
it sets them apart in a very distinct way where it's like, oh yeah, they're unrecognizable as a part of um a part of the community because of these unique ways that they stand out and their unique culture that drives them to be apart from everybody else. Um, it was really neat. I don't know how much of the Tuscan lore came from this author defining this story, or if it was already predetermined. But I did thoroughly enjoy the culture glimpse we got into Tuscans.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, to your earlier point about the first impression in your first impressions take, there was a lot of there was telling, but it was told as like a character narrative and not as like pure exposition, right?
Yeah.
So even if this was something that was known before, the presentation of it was much appreciated. Um, VS Drake, great mention about the fact that the name Tuscan Raiders was about an outpost that they raided, not and like that's not it like their original name. They just gained it from this particularly brutal encounter, and they liked that so much that they kept it, and so did everybody else.
Hmm. Um. So what kind of sticking with the culture theme here. What did you think about the what did they call it? The not quite a militia, the the
Oh
thing
yeah,
Orin. Yeah, sorry, I'm
yeah.
blanking.
So am I. But yeah, the the town call to arms or whatever, whenever they have that crate dragging call.
Yeah.
Um, I thought that was fairly realistic as far as like it was. I know this is kind of taken from Old West because there used to be something semi similar, I guess, for when there might be like native raids on Western towns. There was just somebody looking out when you see the cloud of dust far enough away. Um,
Time to gather the posse.
yeah, so like it was fairly realistic. I don't know why Oren thought that the call was going to work more than once, but I guess he just assumed they were dumb.
Well, it was established that it did work more than once. It continued to work. Even at the Oasis, it worked.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right. I just more accurately, I'm surprised he thought it was going to permanently work. I guess is like eventually somebody's going to notice that like, oh, a crate dragon can't be showing up to everywhere that we show up. Like even if Plug Eye wasn't the one to call it out. Although I guess that was a defining feature for her, which in itself was kind of an interesting bit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think the culture of it being kind of like a this is how I keep tabs on everybody, but also make everybody feel included. It's uh, pretty normal. Uh, like you said, it's a posse. Um, and
Yeah.
it definitely feels that way. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I liked, it seems like such a natural thing, like you were just saying, like old Western stories and stuff where you got to look out for your neighbors because there's no sort of law enforcement nearby. It makes very much sense that that's exactly what they would do. Um, it's I'm not sure, I'm torn about how Orin took advantage of it and kind of fell to greed. It's a common Star Wars theme of, oh, I fell to greed or fear, and I tended towards the dark side. It's tough to decide how much of that is just filling the Star Wars niche and how much of it is an original thought. But I think it played out well, and I would have liked to see more reactions from other people other than our main characters, but obviously the ending kind of got rushed through because the story was over.
Yeah. uh,
uh couple of comments in the chat. VS Drake loved the militia idea and how it shaped the story and in the end. Um Sharad Het is a Darth, but I don't know if it's a spoiler for other books. It's not really a spoiler. So he was a Jedi Knight turned Sith.
yeah, and
I
it's
think
kind
I think a
of
lot of Sith go like that, but
yeah, and it's kind of implied in a couple parts that like what they were learning from him was definitely more than just the light side of the Force. So, um, you know, also I don't see a a pure Jedi settling with the Tusken Raiders, given the fact that their whole culture is built around, plunder and death. So,
rating.
yeah. But I have to shout out this a little bit from Outback Phantom about how Anakin's actions in Episode 2 borked up the Tuskens long term. That was that was handled so well and gave so much context for just how big of a massacre it was. Like, because we only see in the movie like what a few like a relatively small looking village destroyed, but we find out through this that it was much bigger, and also makes it
Well, not only was it big, but it was this frightening act for all of the Tuscans surrounding it, because one day there was a village there and the next they were just all dead.
oh yeah,
They had no
exactly.
idea what happened.
Yeah, broke their spirits and their population, which is kind of nuts to see how that radiates through. So those are the little bits that I like about how it took stuff that we already know, and it could have been lazy and just been left it as, oh yeah, we heard about that happening to a village. No, these have real world repercussions because this world is I kind of said in my intro, filled with all sorts of other people who you know interact with each other on some level, and it makes these worlds feel less like whole planet, one city, with like a couple little areas to fill out the map.
Yeah. Um, I really liked the perspective we get of Kenobi finding out about Anakin's actions, because like
Oh yeah, that
from
too.
from what you gather for the movies is like, there's something going on there. Kenobi knows that something happened, but he doesn't know what happened.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the bit that really plays with what Alpac Phantom just said about how they were scared by the brutality of it, and that puts some context into Anakin's rage to the point at which that's where Kenobi finally was like, oh, this had been brewing for a long time. Like this was way longer than just what was happening with Padme. Like this went back to the beginning, and it gives Kenobi something to wrestle with. Like
Right?
from the point that he finds that information out. Now, granted, that's kind of shoved a bit towards like the third act ish, but still, like it's more than just him wrestling with the dreams and how not to interfere, which is what we kind of see in uh the Obi-Wan Kenobi like Disney Plus special or whatever. It gives him something very specific of like, oh, if I'm going to understand what happened here, I need to go back farther than just what happened in those last days on, you know, Coruscant and Mustafar.
Yeah, exactly. What did you trying to think of a good topic.
Oh, I've got one.
You got one?
What was your favorite like species, or like what was your favorite creature or species introduced in this book? Like, there because there was a lot of critters. There was a lot of like there were at least two species that I hadn't even heard of, and definitely had to Wikipedia to figure out what they were. Uh, so, like, what creatures
I
or
got
its
yeah,
alien species stood out to you?
I got two. I loved the lore of the crate dragon and how the Tuscans were afraid of it, and the villagers were like, "We're gonna use this," and then one shows up, and everybody was like, "Oh fuck!" And then Kenobi was like, "Child's play." uh, I love that the Eopies got a little bit of camera time.
Yeah, that was one that I had to look up the Eobias, and I was just like, how do I not know what this is? Because they're
Yeah.
using all like, and they use them as like transport. Like you'd think that'd be something that we know, but nope, it was. Yeah, the Eobias were honestly one of my favorites to like learn that these things are more than just hairless taper camels. Um, but you're right. The Crate Dragon was probably the most fun one to learn anything about, but also I'm blanking on the name of the dog-like things that the Tuscan Raiders keep. Um, well, they're
The
less dog.
Banthas?
No, not the banthas. Like they're more like attack dog things. Oh my gosh, how am I forgetting one of my favorites? Uh, um, let's see if chat has anything. Uh, Elpac Phantom says you can tell this was pre-Mandalorian considering the crate dragon uh, depiction. Yeah, a little. Yeah, definitely. There was a difference in the way that it was described compared to what we see in the
Yeah.
Mandalorian. So good point there.
And Disney went and said, "We're making our own rules, so get out."
Well, I mean,
Pre-established lore.
yeah, all you had to do is make something that would vaguely fit the shape of that skeleton that the droids walked past in the desert, and
Yeah. Yeah, the Mandalorian had it significantly different. At one point, Plug Eye mentioned that it was like a Tuscan rite of passage to kill one alone. Yeah, Plug Eye went on a tirade about how the rite of passages
Mhm.
were weak nowadays compared to what they used to be because they used to have to go and fight like a crate dragon or something, and now it's just like this routine thing, like going to the groceries for a cup of milk.
Well, it's kind of nuts to think that there would be enough out there for them to be able to do that at all, you know.
Yeah. Oh, maybe
Like,
that's the problem, right?
well, part of the problem that and there's like an implication that the Hutt's moving into the planet and taking over was a part of the issue. I don't imagine the Empire had anything good to add to that at all.
Yeah. So, do you think
Dewback
Kenobi
is the other one I was thinking of, and
Dewback?
those aren't Dewbacks aren't the dogs; those are the other means of
Those are the riding
travel. Yeah, those are
animals.
the
Yeah.
yeah, those are the other. I had the name mixed up uh entirely, but yeah, Dewbacks were kind of fun just to learn what the name of those were because those were just nameless bipedal lizards with no arms to me.
Via Drake asks, "What did you think of the slow burn of the story, not including its namesake in the first half?" So I think
That
he's specifically talking about
yeah,
the period where Kenobi wasn't present.
yeah, and if he was, it was basically minimal. Just uh that I thought was an interesting choice considering it's pretty rare that you have a titular character that doesn't show up until, Act 2 or later in the series. I think that was done on purpose because we needed to, or the author, I think the intention was the author wanted us to find a way to invest ourselves in any of the other characters. I mean, Annie was the uh, primary focus of that as the deuteragonist, if not the
Yeah.
actual protagonist of the book, at least certainly of the first third. But I think it was just so that like we wouldn't just as readers focus purely on Kenobi and what he's doing and just kind of shove the other characters to the side. So in a way I thought that was a smart decision. I think it might have gone on a bit too long for my liking, like nitpicking a little bit, but I would have liked to have seen more Kenobi sooner, but I get why he wasn't there right from the beginning.
Yeah. Um, I already commented kind of on this, but I enjoyed the setup and fleshing out of the Oasis community and everybody, all the farmers surrounding the area. If you ask me, Kenobi was not necessarily the main character of the story. The story centered around Kenobi and his actions on Tatooine. And it's easy to say he's the main character because he's a character that we've seen before as a main character. But to me, Annie was the main character of this book,
Mm-hmm.
and she was in the story full time. It was all about her interaction with Ben, her coming to terms with Orin and who he really is as a person, and her coming to terms with the fact that she was stuck in life and had lied to herself about being comfortable with it.
Oh, and also her coming to terms with the fact that her kids were growing up and had their feelings about all of those things that you mentioned as well.
Yeah,
She's absolutely. I was originally going to save this for a separate topic, but we're in it now. Um, she's absolutely the protagonist of this in my mind. Kenobi goes through a mini hero's journey, but she goes through an absolute hero's journey where she hits every point, including returns to where she started, having learned something.
yeah.
you know, like, so but her arc is more complete in general, and so I think what opens the door to that is specifically having Kenobi be a background character for the first like third. But I think there was a bit of stalling on some of the tension, I guess. It was relying a lot on the Tusken Raiders to provide that rather than
Yeah.
um, some of the interpersonal dynamics. It definitely picks up and it gets there. It just took a little longer than I might have liked, but again, nitpicking a bit. So,
Yeah. Alpac said, aside from the prologue, which I enjoyed quite a bit, I like reading from a drunk's perspective and how the floor tried to attack him. Definitely not the main character. Yeah, yeah, that was there's a lot of entertaining bits when you get perspectives from other characters, I think.
mhm.
VS Drake also says, I personally think it was well done. He was teased at the start, and then the author set up the social situation of the Oasis. It showed how well Kenobi and mesh and then unmesh into society, can mesh and unmesh into society, and then later show how he struggles to not integrate into society.
Mhm. Oh yeah, and it definitely needed to have a community built up to make that any sort of significant storyline. Because if you just say this is a place, this is the trading post, and leave it at that, like why are we to care about the environment when the environment plays such a crucial role in what comes in the story, which is good storytelling because yeah, you can paint a picture with describing stuff, but making it a living, breathing entity in your story usually pays off, in my opinion.
Yeah. Um, we kind of already touched on it, but what did you think of character growth? How did it play out? Do you think it was well done, not well done? Did you get what you were looking for in terms of character growth? Um,
Um,
who
I
who had
think
character growth?
there's absolutely character growth. Some of it felt very good, like Annie's was good. We see how she was set in her ways and resigned to the life that she had very early on, and the situation by situation, she's forced to question pretty much every aspect of her life, and she settles on being okay with some of it and very much not okay with other parts, and for reasons that make sense because of the story. So that was good character growth. You see a little bit of it with Kenobi, where again, earned because he's forced to confront things about himself, about Anakin, about like what his mission there is on the planet and how he's going to, stop those Jedi instincts. It's left a little bit open ended, rightfully so, but also a little bit dissatisfyingly so from a reading standpoint. Um, and then there's other characters like her kids that I'm just like, yeah, you get some character growth because like the son in particular basically was just hero worshiping Orin, and we find and when you find out that your heroes actually suck, it's definitely jarring. But his complete like turnaround about a whole bunch of stuff felt a little bit like, well, we need to wrap up the story. I opened this can of worms. Now I need to close it. Um, and it was a it, it. I wish there would have been a bit more about how Orin got to where he was, because we do get the reveal of like, oh, he started out trying to make it basically basically he just kept making bad deal after bad deal, had some bad luck, but also just kept digging the hole deeper. And I think it's hard to call anything what he had. I mean, he's the antagonist, so character growth isn't necessarily important, but it was hard to tell how much of that was this always who he was, or did he become this over time? And
Mhm.
I was left questioning which that was, and considering the amount of time he spent in the book, it might have been nice to hear something that would give us a hint that that was the way he always was, or if
Yeah.
that was just something he became.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think um Annie and Kenobi had good character growth. Um, Kenobi wars with himself about whether he should intervene in society or stay back. I think it was a cool perspective to have, to see him struggle with that, considering his galactic presence before he came to Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
And then Annie obviously had tremendous character growth with coming to terms with her own spot in her life and what she could do, um, to live the life that she wants, and to not just give up because this is the hand of cards that she was dealt. I definitely agree with you about some of our side characters, like her son, who just kind of had the hero worship story cut short
Mm-hmm.
because the story was over, kind of deal. Um, I enjoyed though Annie's um, character growth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna just go into the chat a little bit. Also, reminder to everybody, uh, Alan just let everybody know, but
You got 7 minutes to vote.
7 minutes. So go ahead and do that. But it looks like Alpac Phantom said that they were worried about the stakes, considering we know Kenobi's end, and he's going to be making it through this, given that he wasn't the focus of the book. That was mitigated, which is a big tick in his favor, which I agree with. And that's why Kenobi not having a fully rounded out character arc and character growth is fine, because it's a character we know there's more of, and he has to hit certain points at certain timelines. So he's not meant to figure it all out or have like a complete epiphany or something that's satisfying within the story. And by making him not the main character, that's okay.
Yeah. I agree with VS Drake too. The Two Sons prophecy was legit a cool touch. What's Tatooine without a prophecy or two,
Oh, it's any sci-fi world without a prophecy.
fair assessment.
Sci-fi or fantasy, really. So what bit of I have a question. What bit of Star Wars lore was your favorite that wasn't related to the Tusken Raiders? Like, what bit of like lore that this added did you really hook yourself into?
um I don't know. I mean, there wasn't a ton else here other than Tuskens and the Oasis. Obviously, we get some from Jabba, but that's pretty typical gangster stuff. Um,
I guess like I had something very specific in mind, and I didn't know how else to frame the question, but I really liked figuring out what was the big damn deal about the moisture farms. Um, and learning that, oh, these things don't just collect water, but they can potentially make water taste better. I thought that
yeah,
was like okay, that makes sense. Like, why would you set up here? And yeah, the moisture farms are meant to um, supply the people who live on the planet, but why would you make that like your whole life, and why would you invest so much into it? And the fact that it's like, oh, we're not just supplying it for everybody on the planet, we can do more with it. And I was like, oh, cool, so this technology isn't just like a condenser. you know like
yeah.
it's something that could be. So I like to getting that little technological bit of lore, that there's like something more to this, and I don't have to just you know hand wave through any of like that. So
Uh,
it made something that to me had been very boring into something mildly interesting, which I like. um
to me, I didn't particularly enjoy the moisture farmer bit. I took that as I'm trying to correct a plot hole in the original Tatooine lore, and I felt like I don't know. It didn't ring bells for me.
it got me asking questions, which I liked, but I can definitely see how it would have fallen short as well, because you don't really get a full answer to it. It's not as satisfying as it could have been.
Yeah. It does make you wonder, like, does it really taste better, or is it because you're in a fucking desert that it tastes so good?
Honestly, I had the same question. That was one of the ones that popped into my head. Pac Phantom says that they took it as having a bad vaporator would make the water taste bad, like you'd still drink it if you need to, but you could get something that was cleaner or tastier, you'd choose that. Yeah, so that to that point, is it that everything else just tastes that bad, or does it taste that good? I mean,
Yeah.
Oren was convinced he could sell it off planet, for a premium. And even Kenobi tasted it and said this was like the best water he ever had. But like to your point, is that just because you're on a desert planet? And,
I mean, like, to my thought here though is like, how fucking good is water after you're done working out, you
right.
know? And
Not to
like
mention
all
working
of
out in the
Tatooine
desert.
is a perpetual workout, right?
Exactly. But hey, we got some it got us asking questions, and to that point, I like little bits of lore that get you asking questions, which is why I wanted to bring it up.
Fair, fair. VS Drake asks, do you think Annie was force sensitive?
Um, I honestly, it's really hard in Star Wars to tell if somebody's force sensitive or just deeply intuitive, because she was definitely deeply intuitive, but it's really hard to tell where the line is, and she didn't do. I I think she might have been, and it's mostly because of how good she was with animals.
Yeah.
Um, it's been shown in Star Wars lore before that some people who get along really well with animals, Kenobi was actually one of them. Uh, might be force sensitive, and if she was, that was where I thought she might have been channeling it a little bit. But quite honestly, I think she was just smart and really intuitive, and I would prefer that she wasn't force sensitive and was just a person who happened to be really good at some stuff. Like,
I think she was highly empathetic, and that was it.
mhm,
You know, it's hard to tell where the line gets drawn with that kind of stuff.
mhm.
Um, I don't think she had any chance of being able to make things levitate in the air.
Oh no, absolutely not. I mean, if nothing else, she was too old to learn any of that, and definitely wasn't like a Skywalker level talent that could learn later on. Um,
Elpac says no hint that she was force sensitive at all. Thea Drake says, I think she was. I don't think she was a Jedi level, but she had feelings for things, and Kenobi kept asking her questions that seemed like he was prodding those points with interest. Intuition and force sensitives are the same, and it's a spectrum. Yeah, that's kind of what I meant via Drake is like,
yeah.
I
Well, and
think a lot
that's
of the time that's the defining factor is those who wield the force are the ones who have a supernatural empathy towards the universe.
mhm. Yeah, and I totally get it, LPEG fandom, for not getting any hint that she was force sensitive. Honestly, I kind of thought she wasn't because Kenobi was asking those probing questions and didn't say anything about it. Like, didn't mention her being force sensitive, or either to her face or when he was talking to Qui-Gon randomly. Um, you know, uh, so I don't think she was, and I kind of like to think that she wasn't, just because for me it makes her character more interesting that she wasn't, and it shows us that there are people who can be good at stuff that aren't Jedi or that aren't force sensitive.
Yeah. I think we've got time for one more topic if you got something you want to talk about.
Uh, I think we need to spend a little time talking about Orin. What were your thoughts on him as an antagonist?
Yeah, I think Orin has some interesting factors and other kind of cliche factors to him. Um I liked how the author portrayed him as this charismatic individual who could talk people into buying what he was selling, so to say. The plot where he turns out to be running a what do you call it, a protection scheme,
Mm-hmm.
was obvious. It was pretty obvious that that's where that was going. Um, I liked I liked that I liked how it played out where he was like in over his head and oh he just needed like one more sword, like I just need one more leg up and then I'm out of
Hmm.
here. I just need a couple of extra dollars and I can get out from under this and I'll just do this one more thing and it'll all be okay. And that feels like such a true representation of debt addicts, so to say. Like it felt so real how he was just like, I just need to do this one thing and I'll totally be able to dig myself out of this hole. Like that felt very real and relatable to a real person.
Hmm. I I agree that like he definitely felt like somebody like your very typical like snake oil salesman, the guy who could like charm anybody into, like you said, buying what he was selling. He was charismatic enough that people who didn't look too closely, like the other farmers who would only see him every now and again, or the people who just liked the fact that he bought drinks after every time they went out to stop the raiders, or teenagers were the people that flocked to him. But people who had a discerning eye uh, didn't. They saw at least on some level through the BS. Um, and I that's how people like that work in real life too, is that there's going to be people who pick up on it, and those are the people that those snake oil salesmen, and quite frankly he's a textbook narcissist, uh tend to either keep very very close like he did with Annie so that he can keep tabs on her, or uh treat them like they're crazy, or like they're the problem, like what's his nuts, the old farmer who wouldn't join the call, uh
Yeah.
who, side note, hilarious character. I love the fact that he immediately takes credit for Kenobi's destruction of all those people, of all of those uh raiders, without he barely takes a beat and is immediately like, yeah, I totally killed them all.
I like how he buried his money under his shit tank.
Definitely. Yeah, that's definitely the old prospector who just can smell bullshit from a mile away. Yeah, Wyatt Ulbrich. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Via Drake says he was certainly a man of many masks, and they cracked and fell away as the story progressed until he was out of masks. And Elpac Phantom followed that up with until he was forced into a new one. Literally forced into a new one.
Yeah.
The body horror hinted at in his fate.
Yeah, that was a little bit messed up, but like again to the point of the lore behind the
Did
Raiders,
you
that was like such a good way to handle him. Like I don't know of
did you
another
catch
like
the tidbit
perfect
at the
example.
very
Which bit?
sorry. Did you catch the tidbit at the end where he finally got that recipe to work? He got
Yep,
the secret recipe when he was making it for the Tuscans.
yep. I caught
It's
that
like,
bit.
ah, it's fucking fitting. One last little fuck you, Oren.
Yeah, when he
Yeah, yeah,
finally
VS Drake. That's what Plug Eye makes the comment about the water being super awesome and it practically has a healing factor when she gives it to her fellow Tuscans.
hmm. Yeah, I kind of, that's where I didn't want to like give it away if it was something that, or give it away is the wrong term, but like I wasn't sure where to put that when I was talking about the lore about the water, was the healing factor bit. I was just like, it's hinted at, but like, is it really? So
I
everything gets a
took
little.
I took that to be more like the Tuscans are finally not dehydrated for the first time in centuries.
That's kind of what I took it as well, but like It's the first time that they haven't had water that didn't have like all sorts of crap in it.
Yeah.
They have discovered filtered water.
Oh
All
man.
right. So, why don't we get into final thoughts then, and we'll
Aquafina.
start wrapping.
I think we broke via Drake with that. Yeah, final thoughts. I like this book. It wasn't a story where I was like, this story is so cool and I'm super invested, and I'm not like, I wish there was a sequel so I could continue on, but I found it to be an enjoyable story. Um I hate to do this, but to compare it to the miniseries that Disney released about Kenobi's time in the desert, I liked the miniseries better. But
Yeah.
um, it's an interesting book. It's a fun little concept theory about what Kenobi's time would be like
Mhm.
on Tatooine while he's hiding. I would recommend it if you like Kenobi as a character. I thought the author did a great job and served justice to Kenobi in the way he was portrayed, as well as the citizens of Tatooine and what they have to put up with on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm. Uh, I I like your points, and I also like Alpac Phantom's point that it was fairly well written, but forgettable one at the end of the day. I do fairly agree with that as far as my final thoughts go. In that it was well written, it was entertaining to read. Is it something that I'm gonna come back to and reference a lot in any way? Probably not. Like I've read other Star Wars stories that are much more compelling, but not always as well written. So, am I glad I read it? Yes. Is it something that I would recommend to? This is something I would probably recommend to either hardcore Star Wars nerds, or I would recommend it to people who like character stories and as an introduction to Star Wars, because this is a great example of like what Andor has done. Is it's taking real people on a planet. It's not world building from the ground up, but it's taking these worlds and it's fleshing them out in a way. So like you said, it's a good concept story, and I did enjoy the read, but I do agree it's fairly forgettable as like a one-off novel.
Yeah, Outback Phantom, well written but forgettable. V.S. Drake, liked the book a lot. Refallen in love with the lore again. Yeah, definitely. It's a good one to, I think, spark interest in novel
Hmm.
series for Star
Yeah,
Wars. Elpac suggests reading the new Jedi Order series. Yeah, I definitely agree. There's some good stuff there. I personally really love um the old order stuff. So
yeah,
the centuries ago stories for me are where it's solid, but you don't get a lot of modern stories from that time
yeah.
period.
Yeah,
But
it's unfortunate.
yeah,
Disney really cracked down on those. I used to
High
love
High
reading.
Republic.
Yeah. Well, actually, I liked reading the stuff that was essentially pre-Republic, like Sith Empire, and even before that. We're talking millennia prior, like up to I think Legends used to go up to like 25,000 years before the main series. Uh, like I think BYY before or sorry BBY before the Battle of Yavin or whatever.
Yeah.
So those really old stories are really cool, but there has been almost none of that since Disney took over. So High Republic is great. I'll have to check out new Jedi Order series. So thank you for that recommendation, Outback.
Yeah, there's so many different eras and stories to take a look at in the Star Wars universe, both legends and not. Um, I would My personal recommendation is to not worry about whether or not a Star Wars story is a Legends story or not. It's all make believe anyway, so
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, the stories are great, and if you like the story, that's fine. You know, unless you're planning on doing some entries into Wikipedia, you might want you probably won't even really need to know the difference between what's legends and what's not. Or if you
yeah.
get into regular Star Wars arguments with your friends.
Then maybe know what's technically canon. Via Strike suggests Padawan by Kirsten White Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. They're both pretty good.
I've read Master and Apprentice. That's a pretty good one.
EU is my canon. Yeah, extended universe. Yeah,
Yep, exactly. I like that take, Outback Phantom. EU can absolutely just be your personal canon.
yeah.
We all have them.
All right, let's talk about what comes up next. Next on the roster that we already know about is War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. That's on June 28th, 2025. Then after that, the result of the vote for this cycle is the Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi, read by July 26, 2025.
Shout out to my
Yeah.
friend James for that book recommendation.
Thank
Uh,
you, James.
Also coming up August, we're going to be doing Hot Book Summer. So books that are were highly anticipated for 2025 as a whole. Ideally, we'll get them into the summer if we can, but highly anticipated books for 2025 is going to be August, and we're going to be doing Adventures in Reading for September. That is all things adventure books. So if you have any adventure books you'd like to recommend, hit us up and send us your suggestions. We will have the vote up for the next round later today.
Yeah. And if you'd like to find out more about us and what we do, head over to dmstable.com. Some specific things about us. If you like audiobooks or want to give them a try, uh, we're big fans of Audible. Head over to dmstable.com/audible to get a free trial subscription to Audible. Audible is Amazon's audiobook platform, and it's got hundreds of thousands of books to choose from. So check them out. A couple other things. Etsy. We have an Etsy page. That's dmstable.com/Etsy. It's mostly nerd memorabilia stuff. So if that's your piece of cake, check it out. We have a YouTube channel. We are the DM's Table on YouTube. The link is below your video. And of course, as we mentioned earlier tonight, we have a Patreon. The link is below your video where we are the DM's Table on Patreon. That's where you can vote on what book we read next. It is free to vote on what book to read next, so feel free to check that out and vote. That way you have a say on what we do with our lives. You have the power. Reach out with your feelings.
You know it to be true.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for plugs. That is a free member perk, as Alan just posted in the chat there. So it doesn't cost anything to vote.
Yep, everybody gets to vote now.
Hooray!
We need to be told what to do.
Otherwise, they'll do crazy shit like read romance novels.
But that was when we were told what to do.
Oh no!
No, but it definitely gets us out of our comfort zones, and we've usually enjoyed doing that to some degree or another. So,
Yeah.
and
And
any more input, we'd absolutely love to have. You know,
yeah, and
like
of
tonight
course,
was fun. So,
if you have any books that you suggest we read, feel free to throw them our way at any time, and we'll make sure they get on our recommendation list, and maybe they'll go up for vote, especially if they're on theme for our next theme.
or one of our coming themes. So we, that's why we tried to do them a little bit out. Oh, also, if anybody wants to know, October is going to be thriller and horror. So if you have any of those you want to recommend,
Start thinking about good thrillers. Yeah.
All right, but thank you everybody for joining us today. Special shout out to VS Drake, who's here every time, and Outback Phantom. Loved having you in the chat. It's always more fun when we have more to discuss and
Yeah, thanks for
more
joining
points
us
of
tonight.
view. Yeah, thank you everybody, and we'll see you next book.
Yeah, see you guys. I'm gonna reach for my